as YouTube. I'm just gonna say hey everybody, how's it going? It's Bo here. Little bit more cleanly shaved. Uh, I a couple days ago, just kind of recovering from some respiratory stuff. I'm all good. A little bit of a cough here and there, but for the most part, feeling much better. Uh, but anyway, during kind of my rest, I was like, you look at yourself in the mirror, you're like, what? I don't even remember what my face looks like, and so you kind of shave it off, and you're like, this was a mistake. How's it going? Y'all, I'm really excited. This right here is a Tiberius. Now, the Missouri Meerschaum, our friends at Missouri Meerschaum, this pipe is no longer offered by them, I don't believe, unless they brought it back by the time you see this, but I don't believe they have. And this was actually created after they discontinued the line. Susan herself actually made this for me and gifted it to me at episode 500 of Country Squire Radio. If you listened to the episode, you knew I was blown away. It was a big moment, at least a big moment for me. And I can't tell you how thrilled I am to get this pipe. I've been saving it, and my intention was to have the inaugural smoke when episode 500 went live, and got sick and have been sick for the last 2 weeks. But finally, on the mend, actually just got done with a nice little workout. I've been doing the Orange Theory thing, and that's been it's been good. And had a little bit of a late lunch. Got a nice some good smoked lamb left over from Easter, and now I am ready to enjoy this with some whale song. And not just that, I've also got this right here. So this it's Yellow Rose, which is a Houston-based Texas distillery. This is their premium collection number 2. This is only available for purchase at the distillery. And what they do is they finish it off with a Cabernet, or rather with a Cabernet barrel, and it really gives it kind of like I don't know, just almost like a brandy-esque finish, and it's quite good. It's quite good. So I wanted something nice and flavorful as I bust into the whale song, and yeah, we boldly go where no man has gone before. So that was Patrick Stewart's. Tiberius was Kirk, right? So I'm also wearing a Star Wars shirt to smoke a pipe named after a Star Trek character. Because as much as I love this pipe, I mean, I'm a Star Wars guy. Woo! Wow. Some of y'all I know have not had whale song. Ooh, I got a little too up in there, and some of it went up my nose. It's almost like a cocoa-iness to it. That's interesting. If you can't tell, this is my first time actually busting this open. It was gifted to me, I believe. Yes, Eric from Grand Rapids hooked me up with this. And I was so thrilled because I was able to give John David such a hard time about it in Vegas. And I've been letting this rest and age up a little bit. Because I have found that I like what I like when it comes to pipe tobacco. It's good to try something new. It's always good to try something new. But I've got kind of some old faithful that I always go to. And if I'm gonna get an opportunity to sit down and smoke my pipe, just not as much as I'd like, I kind of want to enjoy what I enjoy. I can be very much a creature of habit. And so what I do with kind of these other blends, these kind of specialty blends or gifts, is I save them for a special occasion. And this seems to be about the right special occasion. Now, before I light, actually, let me go ahead and pour myself a little bit of this. Not too much. We got a day ahead of us. It is such a unique bourbon. And most of y'all will never be able to taste this because, like I said, it's only available here Houston at the distillery. But it's quite tasty. I'm so excited, y'all. Susan said, she said, before episode 500, after hearing me talk about this pipe and the stem specifically, I mean, look at that stem work. I think it's so cool. She said she just was like searching the place. Like, surely we have one more stem. Y'all don't know. That meant so much to me. All right, let's see. Oh, hell. Come on now. Come on now. There we go. Ooh. Mm. Mm. It's a cool town. It was a gift from a listener, and I hate to say it, but I can't recall who this was from. But it's one I felt needed to. See a little action. Mm. Well, I hope y'all are doing well. So as I mentioned, my initial goal was to actually come on here and enjoy this once the 500th episode went live to kind of talk about it a little bit. But I figure I can do that right now. Let's see. We got Zach. How's it going, Zach? We also got Tyler the Tank. Let's see. Bust out 10, 2020 Sutliff Kringle Cake Flake. Also noticed some light chocolate notes there. Even though it shouldn't have any topping. I think there's kind of like a similarity here. All right, let's see. Let me try not to break anything. That's a decent little pairing. You know, sometimes you just eyeball it. You just kind of like, you want to try something new, you pair it with something you like. But anyway, like I was saying, so 500 has come out. It was interesting seeing everybody process that. I noticed specifically there was the processing it the week before with the barbecue episode. Then there was the processing it when the episode went out, which makes sense. But I think what hit the most for a lot of folks was the Wednesday after 500 went out. Because that's the first week that we weren't there. And man, that was interesting. That was interesting to watch and get those emails in. Such kind words. Everybody sent such kind words, and we really appreciate it. And I'm glad that people enjoyed those episodes. I felt a little self-conscious about them, honestly. Like the event was a lot, like emotionally, and that was the big thing, is that we'd kind of processed. I kind of personally processed a lot of the event during the event and afterwards. And so, you know, about a month later when the episode goes out, suddenly kind of the emails wash over, and it's almost like, it's kind of like, I don't know, I was reminded of like Robert Downey Jr. talking about how they brought him back in to do that final line because they couldn't figure out what he should say when he snapped his fingers and Thanos went away. And then it like hit him at editing. It's like, oh, he should say, "I am Iron Man." And so they brought him back in. He talked about how it was difficult because he'd killed the character. You know what I mean? Like he'd put Tony Stark to death, and so he had to revisit that character for that final line, which is great because it's an epic line, it's an epic moment in the movie. And so there's kind of like a similarity there where you like a lot of the work, a lot of the heavy lifting of kind of processing the end of Country Squire Radio had been done a few weeks earlier, and then all of a sudden it was almost like reopened a little bit, and processing it as the rest of y'all were. Um, I don't know. It was heavy. It was a lot. It was really it still is a lot. For those of you who've not been part of the Patreon or the club, I've gone through the processes last past week, and still am, by the way, if anybody is curious. But I've been going through the process of closing out the club membership and kind of establishing what the Patreon will be going forward. And I was just thinking throughout that process that like to close out, like there's like a product launch, and then there's like closing out or bringing a product to its end. And there's a lot of similarities in the amount of effort that it takes, but it's a very different, like there's a reward system in the launching a product, and there's like a demerit system. You know what I mean? Like there's like a negative aspect of like of loss that comes with closing out a product or a project. And but it takes the exact same amount of effort. And it was just very interesting to go through that, because most of what I mean, just frankly, most of the projects that I've brought to a close have been because they were not successes, whereas Country Squire Radio was absolutely a success. And so it's a very different thing. And to be honest, it caused me, and still to some extent does. Let me put this down while I relight. There's kind of like this almost, and I don't want to use this flippantly because I'm not saying that it actually is, but for lack of a better term, there's almost like a PTSD that comes with, having had failed businesses before that have kind of come to a close, and then bringing something that has been a success to its natural conclusion, and doing so hopefully very well. These are two very different things, and yet there's kind of a similarity because you're going through a lot of the same motions of ending something, and that can be just honestly just very difficult, very difficult. Oh man, these matches are so good. He says right before it goes out. We don't even have that much wind. It's a beautiful day here in Houston. Beautiful day. Y'all, this is really good. Again, I'm enjoying some Whale Song, a limited edition that the Country Squire put out sometime last year. I can't remember exactly when it was. But I did want to mention, and I think I've mentioned it before. Thank you very much, Keith. I was about to say make it so, but again, that's a Picard thing. That's not a Kirk. What did Kirk say? Kirk said some stuff. See, that's the thing. Kirk was really more of like my dad's Star Trek. And if I'm being honest, like my Star Trek was Voyager. And I liked Voyager. But then like I remember like the fan communities around Star Trek didn't like Voyager, but I liked Voyager. And I never really watched TNG. Like that was not something that I was super into. But I respected it. I mean, it's Patrick Stewart. You got to respect Patrick Stewart. And everybody that's on that show. And then I tried to watch DS9, but DS9 was more of like a background. I never really got into DS9. And then later as an adult, I was given like the guide, like somebody gave me a guide on how to watch DS9 so that you specifically follow the Dominion War plot. And I mean, that's just some dang good storytelling. Like there's just no two ways about it. It's fantastic. If you skip all the boring stuff. So that's really good. And this new Picard series, I guess it's a mini series. I liked season one. I found season two to be quite boring, and I honestly not couldn't even tell you right now what happened in season two. And season three's been phenomenal. I've really been enjoying it. They got the kid from Downton Abbey. He's playing his son. It's fantastic. Great to see you too. I'm seeing some of this in the chat here. James Foster, brother, how's it going, man? Kirk was like, "Hey, space alien chick, let's go see the Ready Room." Kirk liked the ladies. That's true. Or whatever alien species was out there. He liked the aliens. This I know. He also liked to speak in certain ways. I'm more familiar with the parody of his cadence as opposed to his actual cadence. I couldn't do a Kirk if I wanted to, but I could pretty much do a pretty good person doing a Kirk, more so than a Kirk itself. That's the best. That's the best I got. I'm liking Strange New Worlds though. That's a good show. I've enjoyed that. Paramount Plus has got some good stuff. You know, and the Lower Decks. I like the Lower Decks. I've actually enjoyed that. That's been a fun little cartoon too. So, you know, there's some good Trek out there. I'm not trying to overly hate with the BB-8. I'm just trying to counterbalance it. This is the way after all. What if Missouri Meerschaum should put out like a Mandalorian and Grogu inspired pipe? You know what I mean? Like take like the little devil, but like tweak it a little bit and give it like a green stem. And what do you do for Mando? You got to go with like a silver band, uh, in some kind of, I don't know, like I guess like Mandalorian carving or something into the side. Um, or even like go with like more of like a triangle type of bowl or something of that nature. That might be kind of cool. That'd be pretty sweet. Uh, the father and child or something like that could be kind of cool. I don't know. Never did get a chance to collaborate with Missouri Mission on pipe. That was something that we had talked with them about a couple of times, and we never could make it happen. They were interested, and it wasn't on them. And we'd sent some different designs, and it just for whatever reason it never saw its way all the way through. Oh no! If hey, listen, Shannon, contact me. I'd love to still collaborate. There's no reason not to on my part. I think that'd be so much fun. But see, that's the thing. Even one of the designs I actually sent was very like Thor inspired, and like that because and like I even like wrote like some lore around kind of the concept and everything else. And I get that it doesn't, and they didn't say this, but I think this is something to the fact that it was like, well, at the time, I think it was a little too much maybe, and it's like, well, it's corncob pipe. You can't really have all this like blacksmithy like Norse s stuff. But like now it's like now Missouri Meerschaum is doing some pretty crazy stuff. I mean, I think like there's an opportunity for them to continue on this path and create some great things. And the best part about it is we get some awesome pipes. You know what I mean? Like it's fun. I think whatever you can kind of like connect like lore to something that like James T. Kirk, he didn't smoke a pipe, but who cares? It's a fun way to pay homage to something that many folks there's kind of some crossover interest, and at the same time you make a dang cool pipe at the same time. I think there's something there. Plus, as Shannon has said, folks outside of Missouri Meerschaum, they do custom jobs all the time. So why can't Missouri Meerschaum do custom jobs of their own stuff? You know what I mean? And I think that's the spirit they've got going over there, and that's why I still, represent them as being incredible in what they do. Very Like we would not have been able to do the show for as long as we did without their support. And so, and it's not, but this is my point. It's not just because of that. In fact, it's not even because of that I'm talking about right now, because I don't get any money from 'em anymore. I just think they make good products, and they've got a really, really, great team over there that's doing some incredible stuff. But oh well, okay. So Pi Lawrence is making the comment that they'd probably get sued by Disney. But see, that's why you call it the father and child. You have to get think, Pi Lawrence. You got to get creative with it. You can't call it Mandalorian. You find what's not in the public or what's in the public domain, and you get a little creative with it. So maybe it's, you know, I don't know. But like I think I actually, you know what? I think at some point didn't Disney try to like copyright quote unquote the child. I think I want to say they did that when they didn't have a name for Grogu. But so that's why you just call it father and child. And like we know, but it's not. I think that would hold up in court. I think that would hold up in court. Okay, I'm being asked by Mr. Simba, Mr. Ike Simba. I think that's right. So asking if you can find me on other podcasts now that CSR is done. Yes, actually, and appropriately, after the James T. Kirk and the Star Trek stuff, I've got a show that's called TV Talk. You can find it at tvtalk.fm. That show has been running for almost about 8 years or so. I think that's right. And it started off as an after show for the CW's Flash, back when that show was incredible. And over time, that show got worse and worse and worse. But we had established something with the TV Talk brand, and so we dropped the Flash and then broadened it out into TV Talk. And so mostly they're mini podcasts, so there'll be kind of 3 or 4 that you might get during the week, or you might get none during the week. It just kind of depends on what the what shows are on and that sort of thing. And they're mostly, honestly, just me giving some quick off the cuff thoughts on. Right now we've got Mandalorian and Picard. I'm trying to think if there's anything else currently. I did Bad Batch, all the Marvel stuff that comes out, anything that's on streaming basically. In those 2 wheelhouses, I'll typically cover, and then we've done some other things. So I did like Westworld for their final season. What else did I do? I don't know. We did some other stuff, but we're still riding out the Flash as that show continues just to hit its face so hard on the way out. You talk about what finishing strong does not look like. If you're still watching the Flash, that's what finishing strong does not look like. That show has been such a disappointment. But anyway, yeah, tvtalk.fm is that place. To be honest, there is one show that's currently in pre-production that will start off as a mini series. It's me and 2 other folks. We've been friends for years, and one of them is a comedian, professional comedian. He was with Second City in Chicago. And the other is an editor and just a mutual friend of ours that she's got some great natural comedy in terms of some good one-liners and that sort of thing. Obviously, I'm not very funny, as in fact, my entire humor is about me not being very funny. So my role in that is going to be more of like the straight man kind of tossing out the issues or the topics and that sort of thing. But we're still kind of piecing it together. The current thought is it'll be in very much the style of a morning show, kind of a classic, kind of late 90s-esque morning show, or in modern times, probably the closest thing would be something like The Breakfast Club. So very tonally different from Country Squire Radio, but also using a very similar show structure. In terms of being very topic driven, but then also having kind of the listener engagement, but also gamification and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, we're gonna give it a 5 episodes. It's something that honestly they've been asking me to do for a while, and I've been kind of back and forth on it. But lately, honestly, I'm in this transition period. Hang on just a second. Let me get the dog out. Or dog in, actually, I should say. I've been in this transition period of moving kind of away from podcasting. I've enjoyed 10 years in this industry and have made a nice little name for myself in the Southeast, especially in Mississippi. Podastery Studios was the first ever podcast company in Mississippi and got local notoriety for that. Was able to create a profitable podcast company, which was difficult then, even more difficult now, because of the amount of content that's out there. There's the low barrier to entry is a blessing and a curse, in that anybody can get in, but because people have kind of gotten in that mindset, there's just a whole lot of not very well produced, not very well thought out shows that clutter the market, and so it becomes harder to actually find what's good. And then on top of that, the business models around podcasting has changed so much that in the early days, before dynamic ad insertion and before kind of the wealth of but basically before it became mainstream, your your advertising markups could be very, very high because the percentage to action was so much higher than any other advertising that was out there. And so it was a great time to be in the industry in those early days and to kind of establish yourself in those early days as the industry was just starting to mature. And what we've seen over the last 10 years is exactly that. People, podcasting has become mainstream. I flippantly sometimes say, whenever somebody mentions a podcast, I'll flippantly kind of ask, oh, what's a podcast? Because I was so tired of hearing that in the early days when I was explaining to people that I was starting a podcast company. They didn't know what that was. They were like, well, what's a podcast? And so having done it and done it fairly well and have been successful in it for the last decade and looking ahead to kind of the next decade, where last year in particular, I remember kind of going into that year and kind of early on, I was like, this year, which was then 2022, this will be the most profitable year that Podastery has ever had or will ever have in its current form. And like, I was very cognizant of that. It was a very good year, but but beyond that, I was also just very aware, even before I knew we were going to close out Country Squire Radio, which is, obviously has been an important leg of the company, but obviously certainly not the entire company. But there was just a lot of things where it was all congealing around, there's about to be this transition. And for the longest time, since like 2017, I have really, really felt like there is such an opportunity in the immersive entertainment space. And I don't know, I'm a fan of it, but I have had to be a student trying to learn that industry. And because it is an emerging industry, it's one that not very many people know about or are very familiar with, which was kind of what podcasting was, 10 years ago. So I actually get excited when we're talking about spaces where people don't really know a whole lot about it yet, or like the thing that everybody thinks is going to be the next thing, and then nobody realizes there's this whole other thing, this whole other like movement that's happening that has the potential to really become the next thing and will become its own thing as it grows and matures. And what I like about the immersive theater space, and I mean, there's people might disagree with me philosophically on this. It's such a high barrier to entry. Not just anybody can get into it. Like if you're gonna do it, you got to come with resources, like money backing, networks. You can't just do, especially a mid to large scale production, which is what we want to do. You can't just do that. You have to have the resources to go at it. And so, yeah, for the past year, the goal was to actually start making some moves in that space and raising capital back in 2020. The market was obviously destroyed, as so many were. But because the podcasting market boomed in 2020, I was able then to basically start kind of creating a war chest from that moment until the end of last year, with the notion that when we make this move to explore immersive, that we don't have to get investors, because I can at least bootstrap it, if not fully bankroll it, with kind of the capital that we've been able to save up. So yeah, so all that to say, I'm not doing very many podcasts because a lot of what Podastery as a company, the next stage is, and the name will likely, very, very likely change once some things are announced as it relates to the first show. But the name of the company will probably change to indicate that we're not just podcasts. There'll be a podcast wing, and that will still continue to be there, but it won't be the sole or, main focus of what comes next. Eversale was kind of an attempt to see if there was an opportunity to kind of keep the podcasting as kind of more in the forefront. And since it didn't really go, well, I can't even say it didn't go the way I wanted it to. The reality is it just didn't have the audience that we were kind of hoping it would have. It verified, okay, if we're going to do Eversale, we'd need to do it in a different capacity. And one where this is a business, where there's actually money attached to it. And so, anyway, yeah. But TVTalk.fm, that show's still going on. So if you want weekly updates from me, that's a great place to do it. To hear my terrible hot takes on television shows. If it moves past pre-production, y'all will be the first to know. I'd like to do something around bourbon, honestly. So I've been trying to figure out if this comedy show that we're putting together, if there's something that could happen around bourbon, but I don't know. I don't know. Be a cold day in hell before I recognize Missouri as a state. My goodness. Yeah, very funny. Oh, show the dog. You know what? Isley already went inside. I'm sorry, I didn't. I'm just now seeing that. Yeah, you know what? Isley will have to hang out with me next time I do one of these. The cream does always rise to the top. That's true, but unfortunately, it's not always true. It's not always true, because there's some gems that are out there that the fact of the matter is, if you don't have the marketing know-how in the modern context, it's going to fall flat. Because you're now competing. The other thing, too, is celebrities entered into the market, and they already have built-in and established audiences. And so you're now fighting against that to be able to make a name for yourself. CSR, you have to remember, and I appreciate all the accolades and everything else, but we had a massive unfair advantage than folks today, which is, back then, it was us and it was Brian and Umpal, but mostly just us and Brian. And so we were coming at it, and this is the other factor too, we were both coming at this, both Brian and us, as professionals, not just as hobbyists, but we had this good blend, intentionally so, of John David with the knowledge of the topic, and me with the knowledge of the medium, the industry. And that allowed us to craft a show that, when you looked against the competitors out there, which again was really just Brian, offered up something that unique and wasn't being done. Nowadays, and there's some great people, I'm not trying to put down anybody, but nowadays you've got so many different podcasts that are out there slicing it from all different angles, and it's awesome. But the democratization of content, just by its very nature, means that you've got options. And so people are going to find their audience, and that's great, but there might not be the same kind of, mass numbers that there were. But it's the same thing for the tobacco companies. I remember when we were talking to, especially large scale, not to mention any names, but let's just say they like to stay in their lane. I'm sorry. Anyway, we were talking to some folks, and they were talking about the numbers for what the industry used to be versus what it is now. And part of what's changed is, yes, there's stigma that they had to fight up against and everything else. But you look at like the modern rise of the modern pipe smoker, and they don't want the mass produced stuff the way they used to. What they want is something that's a little bit more tailored to whatever their interests are. And so those that can be scrappy and do that, even with an established company, again, Missouri Meerschaum, great example of an established company that is doing unique things and meeting their, the various niches that their customers and the potential customers want and can be excited by and be intrigued by. But the blenders in particular, that's why you got folks like the Country Squire or kind of these smaller Strauss, like blenders that are out there that will do more boutique things that'll speak to where the industry is right now, because there's so much more options. That's what people want. So it's just different. It's just different. Isn't there already a drunk history? You know what? Was it obvious that my my half bowl history's approach to telling stories was my audition tapes for drunk history? I've thought about pulling those and just putting them out there as standalones, because as some critique was laid at it at the time, they're not overly pipe centric, which is fine. They're about pipe smokers. You know what I mean? It's not just about the pipe and the tobacco. It should be about the people, because the people are what make up the community. Anyway, but yeah, that was kind of my low key, having some fun with that. Yeah, exactly, Flint. That's exactly right. Unfortunately, sometimes the garbage does rise to the top, but that's okay. It just kind of is what it is. But yeah, so there you go, y'all. Thanks for hanging with me for a bit. This is part of why. Oh, that was beautiful. I enjoy the YouTube aspect of like hanging out, and I could never do a video. I just can't. And I've thought about trying to do videos on YouTube, or at least pipe related videos on YouTube, and I just can't, because I like to talk, and I'd be so self-conscious about like doing a produced video where I have to relight and everything else. And the fact of the matter is, when you're smoking your pipe, you get to talking too much, you have to relight, and I don't want to edit like that. Did that for 10 years. Not editing that. That's why we very rarely ever smoked on the podcast. Oh man. All right, y'all. Well, I hope y'all are doing well. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with me here midday. Have a great day, and yeah, well, let's do this again real soon. Bye, everybody.